I do let you know I have about 15 minutes. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay, great.
So I just want to ask some questions about your shooting of the documentary Diamond in the Dunes in Xinjiang. And so when did you arrive there and started shooting there? And how long did the period last?
I spent the very end of 2007 through 2008, and I spent about a year there.
So why did you decide to do this story?
When did I start to do the story?
Yeah, why? The reasons.
Oh, why? Oh, you know, I had befriended a researcher who had told me about this baseball team, and I thought it was a great story. I thought it was a really interesting way to look at China, look at a minority group, and then also have this kind of wild idea of there being a baseball team, and the only baseball team in 1,000 miles in any direction. I thought that was a great story.
So what kind of preparation did you do before your arrival there, and what kind of procedures do foreign journalists need to go through in order to report in Xinjiang province?
Well, you know, as you might know, it's notoriously difficult to report in Xinjiang. So about 3/4 of Xinjiang province is closed to foreigners. So 3/4 of it, there's no access no matter what. And then I had looked into, if you were to make an official production, you have to get a minder. So you have to petition the Chinese ministry, and then they essentially assign someone to you. You have to pay for them to follow you around as you're filming. And I knew for sure that if I went that path, that nobody would ever want to talk to me, because you know, they'd be very scared and intimidated that a government official would be right there listening to them. So we actually went under the radar as on a extended renewable tourist visa, and that was our approach.
So, did you encounter any difficulties, and did you detect it by the local government during the one year period?
Yeah, we had some challenges. We had to a couple times go through customs and the immigration checks, and that was sometimes difficult. They would question us about cameras and what we were doing, why we were doing it, and we used a pretty good cover story. And we said either one of the things that we mentioned is that we were DJs, and we were doing some DJ and music performances. And then, I got on a couple of occasions we were detained by the police or the military police and questioned. At that time it wasn't too strict. Although I think now, from what I'm told, I don't think we could have done what we did then now. The security controls in Xinjiang, the surveillance, the monitoring and reporting is much more strict now than it was 10 years ago. And so what we did then, I think would be impossible to do now.
Well, how many people are in your team?
For that project, there were just two of us, two Americans, and then we hired some local workers.
Fixers. And you mentioned that there are 3/4 of the province that are totally banned foreign journalists from reporting. So the place we went to, is it Urumqi, the capital city?
Yeah, I filmed in Urumqi and Kashgar. So, and then I also did go into some of the forbidden provinces. And my method was to essentially wore a disguise. I grew a mustache, and I adopted Uyghur clothes and dress style and facial hairstyle. And I actually snuck into some of the provinces under the pretense of being a Uyghur.
Oh, and you succeed without any detection.
No problem. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It got a little bit scary a couple times, but there were no major problems.
And apart from sneaking in, you also shoot in those prohibited areas.
Say one more time?
I mean, apart from just entering in the prohibited area, did you also shoot there? And also, did you include the footages of the prohibited area in your documentary?
I'd rather not say.
Ah, okay. So, how do you think of the reporting conditions in Xinjiang, and how do you think the journalists should cope with or react to this kind of restrictions?
It's very difficult. I would say that the conditions in Xinjiang are some of the most strict and authoritarian and unfriendly to journalists in the whole world. So getting accurate reporting out of Xinjiang is very difficult. I think it's getting more difficult. But I would say certainly if you are a Han-Chinese national, that's a big advantage. I think you'll get a lot more freedom. I think if you are a foreigner or American, European, and of course African or Middle Eastern, I think it's very difficult. But I think the real trick is to travel lightly, not make yourself conspicuous. So make yourself kind of invisible almost, and get your reporting done in a way that doesn't attract a lot of attention. Because I think what the government is looking for, they're looking for big productions. They're looking for people who might essentially undermine their idea of national security. But I think if you are traveling in a small team, that's very helpful. If you can blend in with the population, that's helpful. And I think also it's very helpful to, when you're doing your reporting, to do it in a way like if you're young, for example, you always have a cover story. And one thing that I used at that time, I was very young, and you could say, oh, I'm working on a school project. So if people think that you're doing a school project or some other kind of non-threatening capacity, I think that will put people at ease, even if you're under interrogation.
So you just mentioned the national security. So how did you approach the ethnical tension? Like I saw in the description of the documentary that the ethnical tension once got tightened during your shooting between the Han and the Uyghur students. And how do you approach that to, will you?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Sorry, I mean, how do you present the ethical tension in Xinjiang? And will you say not to cross the red line of the government because they may not be willing to see the portrait of the ethnical tension, but that may exist in reality?
Well, I think you have to figure out what your priorities are. So obviously you want to keep yourself somewhat safe. That's always important when you're out there reporting anywhere in the world. But I think for me, I never really considered, the Chinese government's position was never really in my consideration. Because in a way, that's the problem, right? If no one reported bad news from, or difficult news or controversial news from China or the United States or Russia or Europe or anywhere, they're not really getting the full story. So my commitment was always to, one, portray the reality, to speak the truth and something that's accurate. And then the only real concern that I had was for my subject. So the people in the film, I wanted to make sure that they were protected and not at great risk. So I would say that I always thought first of my subjects, protecting my sources, and then only secondarily taking into consideration any of the government policies.
So what kind of techniques do you use to protect a subject?
Well, you want to make sure that they're comfortable with everything that they say and do on camera. So if they're saying, hey, I said this, but I said something the wrong way, I don't want it to be misunderstood, it could be dangerous for me, I go ahead and cut that out. I always want to make sure that they're comfortable with the risk that they're taking, and they're comfortable with everything they said. So, in a sense, I give them, the subjects and the sources, authority over how they're portrayed in order for them to balance the risk in the best way that they see fit.
So apart from the government side, are there any other barriers that you encounter during the shooting, like religion or ethnicity or language things?
Language was easy. I had a translator at all times. That was never a problem. Religion was never a problem. I've reported in many places all over the world, and I've never had any difficulty communicating across different religious groups. And then, certainly the politics is really the hardest part. I mean, that just boils down to it. So, there are certain suspicions and fears that are baked into the system. Also, because there is conflict between the two groups, kind of some of the subjects were always wondering, okay, well, is this going to be, pro-Chinese or pro-Uyghur? What is your opinion? You have to navigate those questions always. But really the kind of political problems were the paramount, and the security problems were the real big obstacles.
So, like you said, there are different ethnic groups and they may hold different political stance. Do you try to strike a balance or just flow with your characters?
Can you repeat the question? I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you.
Because the characters themselves may hold different opinions. What kind of approach do you pursue? Do you want to seek for a balance and objective to present opinions from different sides, or just what kind of way do you want to present a story?
I think seeking a balance is really important. So I tried to give everyone in the film a voice, and because the film is, focused on both ethnic groups, Han Chinese and Uyghur ethnic groups, I gave them, in a sense, an equal platform to tell their side of the story. So you have kind of a complex, multi-sided story, and you give kind of a fair balance to both sides. So that's what I tried to do, and I think it's important because, like any story, there are two sides, and it's actually a richer story when you get multiple perspectives.
Okay, I think that's all my questions.
Okay, great. So what are you working on? What is this project?
It's a final project of one of my courses. The course is called Global Reporting, Legal Risks and Dilemmas. So I think your story fits very well with this topic. Yeah, and I'm just writing an article to show the reporting situation in Chinese minority areas, including Tibet and Xinjiang. So I interviewed you and another documentary filmmakers who did a documentary in Tibet, and she also encountered such dilemmas.
I will tell you, it's very difficult and sensitive, and I know that twice I was actually arrested in Xinjiang, temporarily, and questioned by police, and it's a very stressful part of the world. So I'm glad that you're reporting on it and finding some new ideas. So I wish you good luck with your project.
Thank you so much, and thank you so
All
much
right.
for your answers. Like they're very, really like because I'm a Chinese citizen, but I've never been to Xinjiang. I really want to, so yeah, really.
Yeah, you should go.
Yeah.
I can set you up if you ever go. Let me know. I'll get you contact.
Okay, let's keep in touch. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye bye.
Thank you for sharing. Bye bye.